nice. Jesus is not intimidated by what terrifies you. So I think I sent it to everybody, including Brother Carter. I sent it to him a little late. I realized, oh no, I didn't send it to Brother Carter. So I tried to send that. It's just a simple little screenshot. Jesus is not intimidated by what terrifies you. When I read that, I thought, that's so meaningful to think about. We as human beings, there are things that we just naturally find scary, that naturally weigh upon our emotional health, our minds, but they're not intimidating to Jesus. And I thought about that. I thought about the concept of fear in 1 John 4 and 18, if you'd like to look there. 1 John 4 and 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. And I love this next phrase is a good reminder, because fear hath torment. Often if the devil's working through fear or anxiety or oppression or depression, whatever the case is that he can try and use, there are many things we experience that are natural. There are many things we experience that are medical, whatever the case is, but the devil likes to use any of them to put in a root of distraction or hindrance. One of those can be fear. But I like this verse, fear hath torment. And you know what? Jesus is not about tormenting us. Jesus is not, he's about helping us. He's about bringing us to clarity, bringing us to understanding, bringing us to freedom. So if there's a torment aspect, often I can recognize, you know what? That's probably the devil. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. And I want to read about a guy who was apparently famous for trying to spread the gospel to the Native Americans, John Eliot, in New England. He even translated the Bible, now they say, into the Massachusetts language. Now keep in mind, that may have been something that the natives were used to speaking that were then living in the area that ended up being called that, but I'm not real sure. But during the violence and the paranoia of King Philip's War, fear among the English colonists became overwhelming. Fear is a tremendous motivator. Fear can motivate to some good things. I mean, there are things we can fear that keep us in check. There are things that we can fear that keep us from taking too many unnecessary risks. But fear left unchecked, and if it's not kept in balance, can become overwhelming. Suspicion fell heavily on native converts to Christianity. So the people they were trying to win, suddenly there's a fear of doubting them, apparently. Eliot did not completely abandon his mission, but historians note that fear and political pressure severely constrained what could be accomplished. And that's what I think about. When we are intimidated or tempted to be intimidated by something that we fear, the devil can start to limit us. The devil can start to interfere with what could be accomplished. And I like that phrase because it reminds me, even if I'm experiencing fear or some intimidation, Christ experiences neither toward the situation. Christ is the one that I can rely on, and he's the one who can continue to help get things accomplished. But the devil will try and use fear. And I'm going to take, Lord willing, later on, when I thought about this lesson, I had a thought come to me. Fear is an interesting concept because it can be good, but it can be bad. Here it constrained what he could have accomplished with the people. Many praying Indian communities, as they were labeled, ended up being dismantled, isolated, or treated with distrust because people started to fear. Isn't that just how the devil would work? If he can't stop you from working, so you go work with people and you maybe win some people, he can't realize, well, can't stop them from working. Let me make them fear them. Let me make them wonder about the sincerity of their conversion. Let me make them wonder, oh no, has this really been real, or are they trying to pull something over on me? Are they trying to manipulate me? The devil can work in terrible thoughts. The very situation that looked hopeless, and maybe God opened a door and you got much accomplished with his help, not through ourselves, but through the Lord. And then the devil wants to work in doubts and fears, maybe questioning the motives of the very people that you helped convert, and the devil loves it. Working in fear. Now you wonder, oh no, what if they were just pretending? Oh no, what if they weren't sincere? Eliot struggled to resist the fearful atmosphere that was around him. Because of it, his mission greatly suffered. You know, if you start to fear and you start to doubt and you start to question and wonder, even in a work that God has allowed you to be fruitful in, then any work that could be further accomplished is immediately hindered because fear overtakes. Fear is an overcoming thing. There's lots of emotions we can experience. They say that for women in particular who go through the tremendous, terrible experience of childbirth, it's traumatic. I mean, the baby has come through something literally traumatic. The mother has survived something that's literally traumatic. You feel free. It would have to be horrible. It's horrible to think about. But they say when they see the child, even though they've just both experienced trauma, what becomes the overriding emotion, Sister Tammy? Isn't that something? If they did, they'd never have another one, right? If the experience of the trauma was the focus, why would they ever continue to have children? Fear, though, is something just like love can overtake. Fear can overtake too. Fear can override your confidence. The people, you may have prayed for somebody and you've worked with them, and maybe people deem them a hopeless cause, but yet you see progress. Fear. Oh no, what if they're faking? What if they're pretending just to be friendly to me? What if they really don't believe what they're telling me? What if they're trying to pull? Isn't it? The devil will work in all kinds of things. And it overtakes your confidence. It starts to override the faith that you had that God is doing something good. And when the devil tries to overtake us with fear, maybe I need to be reminded it's not about me anyway. It was never about me doing anything. It was about me doing something with Christ's help for him. And why not just recognize I can leave the fear with him? Because if they're not sincere, really is it my problem? If there is a seed of doubt that might have some validity, why is it mine to worry about? That's up to the Lord to deal with people. He is not intimidated by those feelings. He has no intimidation. Fear can overtake compassion. People you once felt a love for, people you once had a heart to help, now fears cause you to become wary, standoffish, on guard. And all the while, all the good that could have been accomplished is being hindered, because if you're feeling what you're feeling, guess what the devil's planning in their minds? They got what they wanted from you. Yeah, you came to a service or two, they're done. Now it's up to you. They don't want anything more to do with you. He's working, feeding both sides of the spectrum exactly what they need to hear to make them be overcome with fear or distress or the anxiety of the situation. And this is what's really sad. Fear interferes with long-term vision. Someone could have a long-term vision, and these are fine to have. You think about it in a job. People can start out with a career and they have a long-term vision. They want to move up, or they want to take different roles in the job path. But guess what can interfere with that? Fear, complacency. The devil says, why do you want to be any different? You're doing fine where you are. And that may be true, but there's nothing wrong with having ambition. And if it's not to work out, you leave it in God's hands. And if it doesn't, you accept it. But God's not afraid. And if he allows an opportunity and he shows you that that's what you should do, and there may naturally be fear there, fear of the unknown, fear of the responsibility that comes with it, then you know what? He'll be there to help you through it because he's not afraid. After years of labor in Burma with little fruit visible, and the death of loved ones and illness and brutal suffering, there was a missionary, and I may not say the name right, and I apologize, Adoniram Judson. So he had apparently been laboring in Burma. He had little fruit to show for his efforts, according to what one would see. He'd faced imprisonment, loved ones had died, they'd faced sickness, and he'd been through brutal suffering. He entered periods of emotional collapse and deep discouragement. When things are not progressing as we wish or as we hoped, what comes in? Fear, questioning, doubting, and they're natural. Now, I do believe sometimes we can get things in our own mind, and maybe we don't see the progress we need because we've overstepped our bounds. Maybe we've stepped into something where we didn't belong, but God will show us that with love, and you understand to back off. At points, Adoniram Judson withdrew socially. He isolated himself. And what does the devil love to do with people who are battling fear? Get them alone. Because the fear is the one thing that will continue to speak to them when they don't have another person to speak to them. The fear will continue to raise its voice. And he questioned much about the work that he was trying to produce in his life. Fear, grief, and despair temporarily paralyzed portions of his ministry momentum. The momentum that you have going, the time and effort you may have put into a place, and a people, a friend, or whatever, a family member, the momentum can be stopped because we allow fear to come in. What do you do when a loved one's not progressing at the rate that you hoped? Well, when you talk about it, you say, we keep praying. But when you live it, what's it easier to battle? Discouragement. It's easier to battle fear. They're never going to change. They're never going to this. They're never going to that. Well, you know, God's not afraid of any of that. God's not afraid of any possibility because he holds control. And if people choose not to proceed and people choose not to improve, that's not on God. God knows that's on them. But we can take on burdens that are never ours to bear if not careful. And they paralyze the momentum of what we had going. You may have had something good going with that friend or that coworker, family member, association, or whatever. But then fear comes in. Things aren't going the way I hoped. Things aren't lasting the way I hoped they would last. What am I going to do about it? Well, it was never about you to begin with. It was about asking God to help you be a vessel to help them. Leave it in the Lord's hands. And again, easy to say, isn't it? Easy to say when it's not your loved one. When, you know, if I can say these words to somebody, but if it's not my loved ones, the one that they're worried about, then it's a little different. What makes Judson remarkable, and I thought this was so hopeful to read about, is that he persevered through those struggles rather than permanently surrendering to them. And that's the devil's goal. Fear hath torment. Can he torment us enough that we just give up? It doesn't mean you give up living for the Lord. It doesn't mean you give up on your whole experience. He'd be happy just for you to give up on someone else. He'd be just as fine that you do that you just simply give up on the hope of this one particular dream or this one particular area of struggle. Just give up on that part, and at least he won, at least temporarily. Because if you give up in one area, it might become easier to give up in others. Judson's story is often used to show that fear and emotional darkness can severely limit even faithful missionaries, but endurance can eventually help you overcome them. And that is our part, to endure. Why can we overcome situations that the devil tries to use to weigh us down? Because God is not intimidated by what we fear. We can overcome because we have him. We can overcome because we trust him. But we can only overcome with those notions if we actually live to the expectation of them. I can say I know God's not intimidated. I can say God's not afraid. But that doesn't immediately change what I feel. I have to live to the expectation that God can help me overcome. I have to live to the understanding that God can help me persevere through it. Judson could have said, God has this, there's no reason to fear, and have done nothing else in his ministry. He can say the words, but does he live it? And that is the question that I think any society will look upon us. When you say you're a Christian, they don't really care what you have to say until they see what you have to offer them. Period. Whether it's fair or not, it's just the truth, isn't it? They're really not, because the world has lots of words to say, right, but they really don't care about that until they see what you offer them. Judson could have given in to fear, but what would he have offered the people he was ministering to? We can give in to fear, or we can give into bad judgment, give into irrational thoughts, whatever the case is, but what will it do to what other people see? God is not intimidated by what we fear. And I thought that was such a refreshing, encouraging thought, because I know what it's like to battle just, by nature. I am a thinker. By nature, I process things pretty heavily. If processed meat was made in the brain, I'd be a multi-billion-dollar factory if thoughts produced that. But that's just kind of how I am by nature. And I've learned to, with God's help, process and still try to understand that I may have a way that I do things in the way that I think, but I'm thankful most of it's largely out of my control. Doesn't mean I still don't experience emotions and intimidations and questions and doubts and fears. But if I cave into fear, it will completely rewrite the outcome of my story. And that is the thing that I find most frightening. Pardon the pun. To cave into fear can rewrite your entire story. To have worked with a loved one, to have prayed for a loved one, to have prayed for your friend, and to have seen improvement, but then to allow the devil to say, they're not being sincere. Don't you see this? Didn't you hear that? Can totally rewrite the outcome of something that would have been good. And it's because fear hath torment. The devil knew he could torment me with those thoughts. The devil knew he could torment me with those intimidations. And instead of having the outcome that God might have intended and could have blessed, I didn't remember God was never intimidated by any of the thoughts the devil put in my mind to begin with. And I think that is so encouraging to think. When the devil comes to you and wants to make you have fear or doubt or discouragement, what a blessing to think, okay, devil, you may want to work on me like that, but God doesn't care. God's not afraid. And he can give me wisdom and help. It doesn't mean I have I enact every irrational thought that can come in my head. That's not having faith. That's having no common sense. God will give you a balance of rational thought, what makes sense, what's reasonable. To just do everything on a whim is not responsible. What would be the definition of irresponsibility? It's the opposite of being responsible. And to do something on just every whim, every notion, every thought, that erodes common sense. Some things, do they happen fast? Sure. But fear is also a natural emotion. Fear is something that can keep us safe in times of danger. I'm afraid of poisonous snakes. I don't wish to touch one. That may help me keep me safe. Fear is natural, but overwhelming fear or the inability to take necessary risks can cause individuals to miss a blessing. What if Brother Carter had felt, man, that's 7 hours. Come on, I'm in my early 20s. There's other things I can do this weekend. He might have missed the blessing. Not that we're going to be a blessing. I don't mean that arrogantly. I don't mean that way at all, but God can bless him. And I don't know that he battled any of those thoughts. It's none of my business. But people could. And then you can miss out because we give in. So we do have to take sometimes, God may push us into an area that feels risky, that feels new, that feels uncertain. But if he's the one pushing us into it, he won't leave us there to flounder. If I push myself into something, guess what might happen? I flounder. If we were at a resort and there was a pool, say Brother Austin and I were on a road trip, and I'm like, look, Austin, there's a pool. I'm going to go jump in. That's stupid. You know why it's stupid? I don't know how to swim. He can't save me. Good luck, buddy. That's all he could offer me. Good luck, buddy. I can't swim. So if I put myself in that, I'm not going to take a leap of faith into water. Because guess what? That doesn't make sense. God doesn't ask anything of me that's irrational or unnecessary. But we say those situations and they make sense, don't they? But are there any other areas of my life where I could be inserting God where God has not inserted himself? Could I be taking on decisions for myself where maybe, just maybe, this isn't God asking me to take a risk. I'm just choosing a risk. And then when I flounder, I have no one to blame but me. That is not God. That's not on God. Overwhelming fear or the inability to take those necessary risks, though, when God is asking us to push ourselves, can cause individuals to miss blessings. Fear can cause people to make terrible decisions. Or fear can cause them to follow ideologies and teachings that are unhealthy for them. Out of fear, people can do things. And it's scary, pardon the pun, to think what fear can do when it is completely left unchecked. In Luke 23, you get kind of an example from I don't think just kind of, we have an example from the Bible where someone caved in to the pressures and intimidations of others. Fear can cause us to do that. In Luke 23 and 13. And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto them, Ye have brought this man unto me. Who is this man? Jesus. As one that perverteth the people. And behold, I have examined him before you, have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof ye accuse him. So what did Pilate judge to be true about Jesus? There was nothing wrong. There was no reason for him to be in any form of punishment. Nor yet Herod, for I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him, for of necessity he must release one unto them at the feast. But what did the people cry? Away with this man, and release unto us Barabbas, who for a certain sedition made in the city and for murder was cast into prison. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again to them. So he tried to reason, didn't he? Don't try to reason with the devil, because often he's just going to continue his tirade. And have you ever had somebody, if you lend them an ear, they just keep going? And if it's especially someone who wants an outlet for their negativity, and you lend them an ear, maybe thinking you're being nice, and you realize, oh my word, this is dragging me into a pit of despair. They just keep going. Lend the devil my ear, and he'll just keep going. And he said unto them the third time, Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again to them, but they cried, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, Why? What evil hath he done? He recognized there was nothing wrong. I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices. Ooh, doesn't the devil get loud? When you are in the midst of a situation and you're struggling, he wants to be the voice that cries louder among everything. But God often speaks in a still small voice, not crowding in, not shouting at us, but instead whispering peace to us that everything will be all right. You don't need to fear, just trust. Requiring that he might be crucified, and the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed, and Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. Pontius Pilate caved into the pressure, and possibly we might even assume maybe there was fear. He was also in a political position, right? People for politics will do many things they may not personally agree with, but they fear losing their position or their status, I would assume. Pontius Pilate is widely viewed historically as a leader who compromised his judgment because of fear. Fear of political backlash, fear of unrest, because that'd be a problem for the people to deal with, right? If they had not chosen Jesus, then the people could have what? Thrown fits, wanted their way, made a tirade, and fear of losing favor with Tiberius. The historical accounts portray Pilate as believing Jesus was not guilty of a capital crime, yet he still authorized the crucifixion because he feared the political consequences of resisting the crowd and local leadership. His desire to protect his position overruled conviction and justice. God forbid that be the case. God forbid I view myself as in some quote-unquote position to be defended, and it overrides common sense. It overrides the whisper of wisdom that God could whisper into my ear and say, hey, maybe you need to reconsider this, but oh God, I can't do that. People will think I've done something wrong. Well, if I did and didn't mean to, God's not mad anyway. He just wants to help me. The fear permanently defined his legacy. Isn't that interesting? Instead of being remembered as a strong Roman administrator, his name became synonymous with moral compromise. When someone says Pontius Pilate, does anything positive come to your brain? He is memorialized as the individual who allowed the final crucifixion of our Lord, and cowardice under pressure, viewed as a coward. That's how he's viewed. He allowed fear to ruin his legacy. And we could do the same if not careful. Even if it's your legacy with one person, even if it's just the influence and possibilities that you've had with a family member or friend that you've worked with, letting that fear come in can ruin the possibility of outcome, but also a potential of outcome and the possibility of legacy with the person. Have you heard of fight or flight? That's common. I remember being in freshman psychology, they talked to us about fight or flight. But I don't know that I remember this one. I read about it in preparation. Freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. Any of you younger ones heard that? Okay. Fight, flight. I remember fight or flight. Apparently, back in the day, we had more sense than to freeze. Just kidding. I'm just joking. But Brother Mark's in the day of they just fought. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. But I'm just kidding. Fight, flight, or freeze. And that's some of those are psychological terms, I think. But all those reactions can make sense given your scenario, right? In some instances, when you encounter fear, people try to fight their way out of a situation. And sometimes that might be your only solution if you're really cornered, right? If you're in a bad situation. Some people try to flee. That would probably be my best outcome. Probably for me, that's the one I would make of first. Let's get out of here. Or some people just freeze, not knowing what to do. They stand there frozen. And these things have, to me, a deep metaphor for many things. Some people fight everything they've been taught. Some people eventually flee it. And some people feel frozen and miserable. All are not what God wants for anybody's life. God is not intimidated by any of those situations. He is not fearful of any of those outcomes. I allow them if I give ear and place to the torments of the devil. I think how the devil can use all those scenarios again to try and work an advantage against us as Christians. When I prepared this lesson, I found myself wondering about individuals who try to use fear as a way to warn people, or in some cases, control people. And do not get me wrong. Certainly, God has warnings in his word. Certainly, parents try to warn their children. Certainly, potential risks must be explained to people if they choose certain behavior. But in reality, how often is fear really an effective motivator for some people? And I don't want you to get me wrong. Fear can motivate. It is a strong motivator. I'm terrified of heights. It motivates me to not go on a roller coaster. I know better. It's always, people think, but you're tall. What's that got to do with being 400 feet in the air? I mean, thank you for pointing out I'm tall, but what's that got to do with your feet dangling for 400 feet? No, it's not the same. But when it comes to deep matters of our soul, can the use of fear, I really thought about this, can it backfire? Can using the use of fear backfire? In some cases. It won't in all cases, but we have people, God can deal with the totality of everything, can he? And he understands our differences. And I think ministers who often preach about the dangers of hellfire, why are they doing it? Because they're being fair. It is fair to warn people of potential danger. That's fair. I know they're just loving people when they preach that way, and they don't want them to go to a devil's hell. That's fine. They do that because they love us. But long term, fear is not necessarily always an effective motivator for some people because they go into those three modes: fight, flight, or freeze. That's, to me, what I thought about. People, when fear is the only thing used to try to motivate people, often they will go into those three things. Think about parents, and those of you who parent can relate to this better. I can only relate as a teacher. Think about parents who have a child who's questioning what they're taught. If the parent only uses fear as a way to control the situation, it is likely some children will enter fight, flight, or freeze. Some children will fight the parent and only become disrespectful or appear disrespectful if they don't even mean it that way. But they appear to be in fight mode, often to the adult, because maybe they're questioning or they're wondering, and maybe the adult misinterprets it. Some children will flee and then try to get out of the situation. They just want mom and dad to what? Shut up. They'll and then they're off. And then they're sneaky and they do whatever they want. The fear is not motivating them. They've gone to fight mode. Maybe they don't do fight, but some will do flee. They get away from it. And what's saddest of all, some people flee in a much more permanent way. They don't just remove themselves from a conversation. Sometimes they go to the extreme. They flee from the whole situation. And people will actually have nothing to do with family members to the extreme. It's really sad, isn't it? But some kids choose to freeze. I think these kids can be some of the saddest to witness. The others have a little bit of pliability. They thought through it enough to know, I will continue to question. They thought through it enough to know how to survive the moment. But the ones who freeze, the ones who just feel stuck, they feel trapped in their situation. The fear they experience has them so gripped to the point they cannot think for themselves and they're afraid to make any moves. So as a result, maybe they stay put, but all the while, deep down, they just feel miserable because fear hath torment. That isn't of the Lord, is it? God gives a rewarding, beautiful experience that we have to get for ourselves. And what motivates one may not motivate another. Can fear motivate some? Absolutely. You know I'm not saying it's not a motivator. I'd be contradicting myself, wouldn't I? But for some people long term, I thought about how some people go into one of those modes: fight, flight, or they freeze. The devil can do the same things to people who want to serve the Lord. I found as a teacher, the threat of consequences is not always an effective motivator for some children. If you don't teach and that surprises you, don't be shocked. They simply do not care what the consequences of their actions or lack of action will bring. Saying to some children, and maybe as parents you know, aren't you afraid you'll fail? You wasted your breath. That's meaningless. If they were afraid of that consequence, guess what? They wouldn't have made the choices they made in the first place. They wouldn't have put themselves in that situation. I think the devil works hard to make some people numb to what they hear when it comes to their soul. They've gone into fight, flight, or freeze mode so often, if not careful, they become numb. They don't want to hear anything. Children become numb to being fussed at. Children are the masters of They learn how to play a game. I mean, they're not dumb. Kids are smart. They understand how to manipulate. They've learned how to work adults, and often they can work their parents like musical instruments. The harmony goes the way they wish to hear it because they've learned how to manipulate. And kids can be the best at learning what to say so the adult will shut up. Well, I've been around for a long time. So sometimes if I'm talking to a kid, I'll say, now listen, are you just agreeing so I'll shut up? And it's like they've never heard, I don't know if they've never heard that said, and they'll go, maybe, or they'll grin. They're not being disrespectful to me. But sometimes you just have to point out, look, the goal isn't that I'll shut up. The goal is I just care about you and I want to help you. And that's just what God wants for us, to care about us and to help us. And when it comes to the soul, people can become numb. He whispers in their ears. The devil can whisper horrible things into people's ears. They just want to control you. They just want you to stop doing things by trying to scare you. And when people experience those thoughts, they sometimes fight, meaning they have no desire to hear anything else about their soul and its well-being, so they fight it. They fight any truth from any person, and all the thing is the people may just be trying to love them. But the devil, and through their choices, they've allowed themselves to get into fight mode. They may take flight, meaning they will simply remove themselves from the situation where they are hearing anything the devil's trying to wear them down with. So they just remove themselves. Or they may freeze. Those who freeze are probably, to me, the most miserable. They don't make moves, but they live in an almost constant state of anxiety, wondering what's going to happen to them. God doesn't want us to live that way. God is not intimidated by what causes us fear. And if people could learn that and people could know that, then a lot of freedom could come from the anxiety and the pressures that the devil wants to put on them. Doesn't mean it goes away immediately. We have a choice to work through it too. In 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. He gave us the ability to think for a reason. If we were meant to be mindless, we would not have the responsibility of making choice, would we? The verse doesn't give me permission to do whatever I want without fear of consequence. It's far from it. God has expectations for my life. On a job, Brother Carter will start his new job very soon, Lord willing. He will find that they have expectations. He may not enjoy every expectation, or he may enjoy them all. But he's a human being. Maybe he'll find some that maybe he's not sure about. But he'll still do them. How come? It's the right thing to do. It's expected of him because he doesn't want to live in fear of losing his job. We will do things for our job often without question, won't we? And why? Because the devil ain't worried about us there, unless he's trying to work in a bad influence. Then he might try to work through us through our job. If he can use my job as a way for me to be a bad image for the Lord, then he's going to work. Then he's going to try to work through that. But if that's not where he knows he can best get somebody else, he may not even bother us there. You know what? I can do things for my job without question, but why might I so easily question something that I may not like that's expected me from God? That thought really struck me as I did this. Fear hath torment. The devil can take my questioning, which is not inherently wrong, and he tries to work in fear. Oh, see, somebody's trying to control you. You better take flight. And I pray that God will help me to have a genuine discernment from him so that I don't entertain thoughts from the devil that will work unnecessary fear and unnecessary caution into my heart. And if I have fear about something, then I pray I remember that God's not intimidated by what is possibly terrifying me. He'll help me through whatever's working on me so that I don't have to be stuck imagining that I have to fight, flee, or freeze. He doesn't want that outcome. In Joshua 1:9, have not I commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. And I'm so thankful that I have the Lord with me wherever I go. I think about individuals who give in to fear and they either fight God's truth, flee God's truth, or they feel frozen in an experience that feels foreign to them. My heart goes out to them because God offers a rich life. He offers a rich experience. Fear hath torment. God is not a torment. Living for him is not torment. Fear left unchecked can cause people to miss so many blessings. I thought about this as I prepared the lesson. Of course, these thoughts were natural for me. I was so much older than most people who marry for the first time. It would have been easier for me to give in to all the fears that I was experiencing, all the fears of the changes that I knew I would experience and what would be expected of me. I could have given in to the very real fear that it would be too much at my age. It would have been easy to give in to the fear that I just, quote unquote, couldn't do it. I could have lingered in fight mode, fighting what I knew in my heart felt so right about being with my Rhonda Ray. I could have lingered in flight mode and have never tried to nurture the possibility of a permanent relationship with her. I could have stayed in frozen mode and have done nothing different and just lingered in whatever state we were in before marriage. However, I'm so thankful that fear did not become the final rule of my decision. And that's just a life choice. I'm so thankful that I worked beyond the fear with God's help and His time. So I don't necessarily know, as I shouldn't. It's none of my business in many cases, what is on everybody's hearts and minds. But if something's causing somebody to have fear, to have anxiety, or to stress, or to worry, or to experience, generally speaking, uncomfortable feelings, I just hope it can be remembered that none of it phases God. As much as the devil may want to use it to wear me down, God ain't worn down. He's not going to be worn down. He'll give help, whether it means I make changes, whether it means I stay the same, whether it means I just have to learn to trust Him more. I'm just thankful He's not terrified in the least. We'll give it to Brother Mark.
Appreciate that good lesson this morning. It's something that we all face, these different situations from time to time, and some a lot more time than not. You know, we're in these battles, but God's got it under control. God will take care of it, and we got to remind ourselves of that. It's easy to stand here and say that, but I got to keep that in my mind when the battle comes, because we all face them. But thank the Lord, He'll help us through. That's some good words of wisdom this morning, and I appreciate it. We'll take just a little bit of a break between service here, and then we'll move on shortly, Lord willing.